What if burnout wasn't a problem to fix, but a signal guiding you toward deeper alignment with life? The Practice Podcast invites you to explore how aligning with your energy can transform your connection to yourself, your relationships, and your work. Through real stories, data-driven insights, and life-centered tools, each episode helps you tune into your body's signals and create life-affirming change from the inside out. Welcome to the Practice Podcast. Welcome to the Practice Podcast. This is a Practicing With episode, a space where we bring in voices, doing work that rhymes with ours, and we let the conversation find where the two frameworks actually touch. Today, I'm talking with Mori Taheripour. Mori is a faculty member at the Wharton School of Business, where she's a 12-time award-winning teacher of negotiation and dispute resolution. And she's the author of Bring Yourself, How to Harness the Power of Connection to Negotiate Fearlessly. She's worked with Google, Goldman Sachs, the NFL, the NBA Players Association, the White House Fellows, leaders at every level of high-performance pressure. And over 2 decades, she's arrived at a perspective that I think anyone, and especially leaders in the practice, are going to feel in their bodies. That the most important negotiation you'll ever have, it isn't across a boardroom table. It is with yourself. What Mori calls self-negotiation, the practice of knowing your values, reading your own signals, and choosing from your whole system instead of from obligation, conditioning, reactivity, is what we call energetic literacy at SORCE. Which is why this June, Mori and I are bringing these two bodies of work together at Canyon Ranch in Lenox, Massachusetts. It's called the Stress and Energy Reset. It's June 4th to the 7th, 3 nights in the Berkshires combining Canyon Ranch's medical and wellness expertise, SORCE's living system framework, and Mori's session on negotiating your energy. So if this conversation lands for you, that's where we go deeper. And we certainly hope to see you there. But for now, let's welcome Mori. So welcome. I have Mori Taheripour here with me now, and it is a conversation that I've been looking forward to because our bodies of work, you and I now can see the overlap, and it's going to be cool to unpack how on this side of the fence, we're languaging things in regards to energetic literacy, and then how, in regards to your frameworks, Mori, how you are languaging things around values. And you also are really encouraging people toward embodiment, which I think is a radical concept. To think that negotiations and embodiment could go hand in hand. This feels like novel terrain. So before we completely dive in, give our audience just some context for how you get here as a subject matter expert in negotiation, but I would say bleeding edge negotiation, even though you are reverting them back into their bodies, that feels bleeding edge for some reason. So just explain how you get here with this subject matter expertise.
First of all, I'm thrilled to have this discussion, which will be one of many for us.
Yes.
But I so enjoyed talking to you sort of as we were talking about this particular podcast and really getting prepared for this conversation. It was so nice to actually be able to sort of speak your language and really be able to connect on what became very obvious for both of us that isn't obvious to most people. Because frankly, a lot of people think of negotiations, they think about it as a business thing, right? As a transactional thing. And if you do that, it's really hard to make this connection. Because for me, negotiations is life. It's all the conversations that we have with ourselves all day long. It's all the decisions that we make. It's all the relationships and interactions that we have with other people, the world around us. And so if you consider it from that place, then you also consider all the things that we need to be able to have those conversations and those sort of moments of decision making be in a place of I don't want to say peace necessarily, because I don't know if that's that easy to come by, but not coming from a place of depletion, not coming from a place where you're so either pulled in a million directions and you're so distracted, but really finding those moments where you can be completely present, first of all, but you also feel a more sort of energy that has been renewed. I have to say it that way, because it's sort of the connection I make between, when I want to negotiate well, or when I'm leading a class, which is one big negotiations, persuade my audience. Like, I need to get my sleep. I need to feel sort of this sense of fullness, and from a place of being able to have mental clarity and focus. Because then I know that two things happen. One, I'm not delivering the best product, which makes it that much harder to connect with people. But I also really love what I do. And I feel like if I'm not in a place where I can be present and really, like, all systems are a go, then I'm not really appreciating those moments because I'm tired and I have, like, brain fog, and I don't have clarity. And so the connection between having a successful negotiations, whatever umbrella you want to put that under, and sort of your mind, body, spirit, soul, energy is so clear, because you need one to be successful at the other.
Mm. And again, what in your life, how does your path unfold to get you here? Because not many people would make this connection. So, I mean, I think everybody intuitively somewhere is making this connection, but the fact that you are doing it in specific environments that, tend to lean very logical, analytical, left brain as most successful way to get something done. How do you arrive at this novel place where you're like, yes, and?
Because I think first you have to reframe negotiations. To me, negotiations is very human. It's about connections. Like I said, it's sort of like the soundtrack of your life. It's something you do all the time. So the minute you do that, it takes on, I think, a different sense of relevance, but also you realize how much everything else in your life actually affects it.
Mhm.
And so if it's just something narrowly like, oh, I'm buying or selling a car and that's the negotiations and that's the transaction, that's all negotiations is, then frankly, the connection isn't as easy or as logical. But when you think about this as being sort of so much a part of your everyday routine, and it took me a minute to think about it that way, because when I first started teaching at Wharton, it was shortly after I graduated. I would say I was sort of I was following instruction to the T, right? Because I was nervous. I would never imagine myself being somebody who was going to teach for a living, standing in front of a classroom. I'm an introvert. Like, it was all very scary.
Oh, wow.
And
Yeah.
there was a sense of not being sure of myself. And so the first 3 years, quite frankly, weren't all that enjoyable, because I was sort of locked in, and this is the syllabus and I'm following it to the T. And when I get in the classroom, this is what we have to cover. And then I was like, after a few years, I was like, you know what? I don't want to do something that I don't fully enjoy, because then I don't think that my students are getting the best of me. They can, you know, plug and play, take me out, put somebody else in there, and they can teach them the same thing. So I really did some soul searching, and I thought, I do love this subject, but why do I love it so much? What does it mean in my own life? And when I did that and I realized that, oh my God, it's really at the core of everything, then that changed not only the way I taught, because I thought, first of all, if that's the case, then I'm the one who's actually the most important part of this dynamic. My energy, my wants, my needs, my mindset. So I stopped giving sort of the external dynamics power, and I started really internalizing it. And it really came under the umbrella of sort of how your mindset actually affects this whole process, but also how how much you need all the things that we talked about for you to be actually successful. So control what you can control, let go of the things that you can't. And to be honest, Jessica, that was the process. It wasn't overnight for me either. It was just being in my own body and really giving myself the space to think, what does this mean for me? And then that sort of there was a snowballing effect from there. And then I love this space. I love this conversation. I love what negotiations is.
Negotiation is life.
Negotiations is life.
And life is negotiable. And we are constantly, like, we really love to embolden people to really claim the creator inside. Because all the problems that we face, a lot of these, are because we have created systems that create these outcomes, and therefore we can recreate. We're powerful creators. But if you think that what is out here is static and not negotiable, that's going to lock you into a very powerless position. So the position that you take feels ultra empowered. But here's the kind of the fun. As you were talking, I was like, okay, yeah, in negotiation, popular culture will teach you to suit up. But you're saying, no, strip down. Like, it's the opposite. Don't suit up, because then what? Fill in the blank.
Then it's performative. Then it's a performance. Then authenticity is not possible, because you're not honoring yourself. You are doubtful of your own decision-making skills, of your own power, of your own sense of worth, and really, I would say, bet on yourself. Like, that's the only person you can really control, and the only person that and based on all the research that really controls the outcomes is you. So don't look out. Of course, you have to prepare and get to know who the other person is and do all the things, but it starts with you. And once you can square that off, and whether that means therapy or taking care of your physical health, I shouldn't say all those things, then the better you, the more whole you, the more fulfilled you can really step into this role of negotiator and do it from a place of authenticity and thus presence. Because when you're also performing, you are not present. You've rehearsed a script that may or may not serve you well. And also, for sure, if things go off script and there's conflict, or there's like something blows up in the middle of this, I don't know about you, but it's very hard for me to remember what I had memorized. Mhm. And I get even more nervous. I'm not sure. I get rattled. But when I'm like, oh, I got this, right? This may not be exactly what I expected. First, take a breath, maybe step away, but I believe in myself. I know I'm prepared for this moment. But that doesn't come from a place of performance. That comes from a place of authenticity and empowerment.
That's the other overlap, is that's exactly what we are trying to get people to lock into, is authenticity. But one thing that I heard you name on a podcast, I'm probably not going to get this totally right, but it was something to the effect of people kind of would be more willing just to get in there and, like, again, suit up and negotiate the terms. You don't think that that's as effective. But what you are asking them to do then, the alternative of performing strength, is to inquire into your personal values, which is a much longer journey. That is a very therapeutic journey. So you might think that you're negotiating the terms of, a new job, a divorce. And really, what if they are following your framework, your path? You're not prescriptive, but you do give direction. You really have to do the inner work to know self. And some people are up for that, and some people aren't up for that. And I'm just wondering if you can, I don't know,
Yeah.
speak to what you see in
Yeah.
regards to that frame.
So you're absolutely right, especially if people are coming in expecting. I mean, now I have a reputation, so there's not a lot of surprise often when
Right.
people teach my class, but most people who are not expecting it come in and they're like, this chick is so woo-woo. What is she talking about, right? Like, they're expecting me to be like, say this, do this. I always say, like, here's the 5 P's of negotiations and the 3 C's of... That is so not where I come from. And some people really love it because it feels like somebody's finally given them permission to not follow some obscure model. And instead of saying, no, you're the one. Like, you should make this work for you. And it's so freeing for them. And for other people, they're like, wait, I have to work on myself? Like, can't you just tell me what I'm supposed to say? The thought of working on yourself with all the things, all the messiness and the good, the bad, and the ugly, all of that seems so heavy for people because, I do get sometimes the comments of, well, can't you just tell me what I'm supposed to say? I'm like, no, I really can't, you know, or should I do this? I'm like, I don't know. Should you? And then you have the conversation with people about, what are your non-negotiables? And they're thinking it's a thing that they're not supposed to give up. I'm like, no, by that I mean your values. And do you know how little time we spend thinking about what our values are and how to honor them? Which seems preposterous because, shouldn't you go through life with that as being your sort of your North Star? But we don't have time. We don't make time. We don't look inward. We don't give it the space sort of that it deserves. So for some people, this is very empowering. And for others, shining a light on them is like, oh my God, like I did not know this is what I was supposed to be doing today. But you know what? Everybody then, once they sort of let it sort of seep in and experience it, I've really not had the experience of somebody walking out and being like, that was really awful. I get people walking out a little shell-shocked.
That was hard. Yeah, them saying that was hard.
Yeah, but I got sort of, for example, I taught yesterday, and actually 2 days in a row, 2 very, very different locations. And the one yesterday, I got a note from one of the students last night, and he said, thank you for giving me the permission to just be myself. Because the models, essentially what he's saying is what's out there, especially for men. He's like, that's not me. And so I feel less than. I feel like the tough guy, the rugged guy, I'm empathetic. This is who I am. And so I always felt like, oh, I'm showing weakness or I'm not living up to that promise of what I'm supposed to be. And he's like, thank you for letting me know that that's actually not what I'm supposed to be doing at all. And there's another way to this. And so I don't want people to think that this is just for women and that that's who it appeals to. This is for anybody who feels stuck in a place where they are not sort of walking through their life in a place of authenticity and connecting to their values and in pursuit of that. So yeah, very long.
Yeah. No, it's a beautiful illustrative example of what's possible here when and this is our frame. Our frame is that we are born with these 2 beautiful hemispheres in our brain. And this is a generalization, but it really helps to simplify what we're up against. And that left side of your brain is your logical, rational, analytical. It sees things as parts. And I think that is how the system has been modeled after a bit. It's a bit mechanistic. We've over-indexed on that, and we've under-indexed on the right side of your brain, the capabilities, which is energetic, intuitive, somatic, creative, deeply, deeply personal. And that has been taken out of the decision-making room in many regards, especially in the workplace. And yet, the siloing of logical and your energetic or your somatic information is causing this friction, this strain, this buildup of pressure, and people are at the tipping points. I think a lot of this is a result or is reflected in the mental health crisis that we are experiencing because we haven't been taught how to have these 2 sides of self in a friendly conversation with each other, validating each other, building a permissive bridge between the information. And it really locks people up. It makes them feel like they're hollow on the inside. They're performing life, but they aren't feeling life because until people like you step forward in their life that come forward and say, no, the energetics and what you feel, the values from a felt experience place matter just as much as the logic behind everything. And then all of a sudden they're free.
Yeah.
They're free to be them. They have because we don't want to just like throw out the left brain. We don't want to throw out all of that beautiful analysis, but we also need to integrate more of that right brain, which can sometimes appear to be the feminine, although every man that I'm aware of, every male-bodied person has a right hemisphere. So, you
Right.
know,
Exactly.
how do you sense into how we are languaging it and how we're laying it out for people?
It's like I couldn't say it better than what you just said, actually.
Okay.
I think that, um, yeah, it feels like those are 2 different countries almost, right? Like, they don't speak the same language.
Right.
They're completely disconnected. And yet what I'm talking about is let's just take maybe business negotiations, right? What I'm suggesting is you need both sides of your brain because one is gonna do maybe that looking at the data, looking at all the objective information, looking at all of that, and without using the other side of your brain, then it appears really cold and disconnected. And maybe the outcome won't even feel good because you haven't really considered it in its totality. And what's really powerful is when those forces, those 2 countries sort of join forces and you're making a decision or you're working through this transaction from a very logical perspective, but then you can do things like ask yourself, like, how do I feel about this? Is it aligned with the things that I consider to be my values? Does it feel good to me or does it feel like, you know what? And when we say things like, I can't pinpoint it, but it just doesn't feel right. Well, that's because even though you may not be able to articulate it, your body is telling you something really important. And to think you shouldn't even pay attention to that is literally like only taking half the data and then throwing the other half away. So your decisions aren't as well formed. They're not as well thought out because I believe that you need both sides to really work through these things. And I think that again, the most wholesome way of doing this, right? The most complete way of doing this is to then consider that you have really 2 very powerful sources of information that you have. And you are so much better off when you consider all of those things. And by the way, in the midst of a negotiations, that just means really being present. I mean, this level of distraction that we have, the moments that we can't just be present and still and look around and notice things. And oh, by the way, you just said something to the person sitting across from you, but you were so busy, saying the rehearsed thing that even though they didn't open their mouth, they just told you so much information by the way that they maybe shifted in their seat or you see like a little dribble of sweat, or maybe they smiled really big. They looked relieved all of a sudden. And so if you're distracted and you're not present and you're not connected, then you would have missed all that information too. And in negotiations, we always talk about information is leverage and you just gave it away. So it's like so much of that kind of works together.
Mm, yeah, energy speaks. You go into the room, and this is what we're doing in the practice is trying to get people to validate something that is innate,
Right.
validate something that is very instinctual, but you've been conditioned to unsee it. Now we need you to actually put a lot of respect on it because it is speaking consistently. This is a little bit of an off-roading question, but I'm very interested in your experience with it because it does seem that maybe, I mean, it's difficult for women to be invited back into their bodies, embodied, of course, and to language it, but it still feels like there's more permission as a woman to feel, to sense. The masculine must be up against so much deconditioning, unlearning to get to a space where they feel like they can feel without it risking their masculinity. And I'm just wondering what you have to say about that.
It's really true because the female, the sort of the gender connection is often made just as you say, right? Sort of giving permission to women, allowing them to feel really comfortable in who they are. And I believe we're excellent negotiators. So that alone is not something that we're told every day. And thus we don't believe it, right? and all the research that's gone into, when women don't ask and what happens as a result and all the social implications, and the consequences of us negotiating in the first place. And that's how that's received by other people. So a lot of energy goes there into those conversations, as it should, right? Um, and because we still have a gender pay gap, we still have an inequality. I mean, all that persists. But some of the most dramatic change that I see in my classrooms are actually on the side of men. And again, that social contract that we all have, that gender roles that are supposed to be fulfilled. And I've worked in some very sort of male-dominated industries, right? Sports and with CEOs of corporations and what have you, and cultures, by the way, right? I've taught students from all walks of life, all different ethnicities, all different cultures. And there are some cultures that are very male dominated. The whole machismo factor is really huge, right? Um, but I'm always so, one, grateful for the trust that they have
Mm.
to show their vulnerability and inquire about ways to address these things. And like I see sometimes from some of my students, they're like, I want to be a better husband. I do. And I didn't really know how these things are connected, but as you're talking, I understand the things that my wife has said, the things that my partner has said.
Mm.
Like, maybe I want to be a better father. And it hit me like a ton of bricks, what I'm not doing, right? And this is how it's helping. But the second thing I'm very grateful for is um, that they feel comfortable enough to go into a process that's going to be difficult. That they're going to commit to the growth and they're going to commit to what will be change, but how much easier it would be if they didn't go down this path, because falling into that script and fulfilling what our promises to society is so much easier because yes, it's disconnected, but two, you don't have to worry about the pushback and all the consequences that come with that. But it's really it's an incredible change to witness. And I come really out front. I say things like, look, I am, for example, when I teach entrepreneurs, I'm like, I'm an entrepreneur myself. I've been an entrepreneur my entire life. Everything I'm telling you may seem overly optimistic or maybe even naive. It's not. Give it a chance, and see how this affects you. But you have to also create that place of trust, Jessica. And I know you know this, right? To have this kind of conversation with people, you've got to create a place where they feel that they're not being judged. And, because otherwise the places we go are a little scary, and not necessarily logical in the way that we're meant to think about what logical means. So yeah, it's the change in men particularly is really, it's really beautiful. It's really gratifying to see.
That's beautiful, and I'm encouraged to hear all that. We have a beautiful constituency of, male-bodied people in our membership, and I am blown away by the places that they are willing to go, and I feel relief in my body every time they do. Every time they do, I'm like, oh. That's so lovely. Thank you. Because we're all connected, it's like we're all connected. When you win, when you release something, when you heal, I feel it. I'm in the afterglow of it. So it's beautiful. Um, okay, so let's now explore a little bit more of uh, yet another overlap, which is energetic currency and negotiation. What does it mean to negotiate your energy? And what becomes possible when someone has actual, maybe physiological data about their stress state? Like, what do you think? Because that's what we bring. We bring objective physiological data, and that's the entry point into the why is this the case, the subjective exploration. So we always like to ground, again, with objective left brain, but then it opens up into subjective right brain. So I'm just wondering for you, what does it mean to negotiate your energy? We can start there, and then I wanna layer in the objective piece.
Yeah, so for me personally, for example, like, I've done a lot of the work. I've done the therapy, I've done all that, and, um, these days, I think just being so connected to myself and my own body, I I have MS. I This is sort of my body has been living with this, um, disease, if you will, since 2010 when I was
Mm,
diagnosed. Um, and, while this sounds like real, like, hallmark moment for as I say this, but it's absolutely true. I always say it's one of the best gifts that I was ever given. Um, I'm very lucky because I'm so healthy and so much so that I often forget. And I've had the privilege of that. But it's not because, like, I don't do anything about it. I honor my body. I work out constantly. eat well. I replenish my system regularly. But what it's allowed me to understand is, like, the moment that I am stressed and there's anxiety, there's something in my body that's gonna tell me. Like, I have my own built-in system, right? The or if I'm really, really sick and I'm pushing myself, the tingling, the immediate sort of knowledge, right? So for me, this is a very obvious thing. And, I am so grateful for that because no longer am I feeling guilty if I get up and stop doing something that I'm doing, and I'm like, "It's time for me to go take a walk. It's time for me to go work out." Like, my what will not be replaced in the course of my week or my day is a time sort of cut out for activity because it's so important. And when I don't, like, if I have a lot of travel or something's happened, my energy is it's woefully depleted, right?
mm,
And
mhm.
so I have that. But what I was gonna say is that so throughout the work on myself though, like just in sort of my mental health and all the rest of it, that I've done the therapy, I've done all the work on myself, and not to say that that's a sort of the end of the chapter and everything, I've graduated and I don't have to do it anymore, but what really these days I feel like I need is literally feel when I'm blocked.
Mhm.
My energy is blocked, like something is not allowing me to think clearly or I'm really down on myself. I can feel my confidence is lower. I feel cloudedness, a sense of like I don't have clarity. Why am I questioning my decision making so much? Why is it that I can't just make a decision and move on with it? Why why is this all so heavy? And so what has become really effective for me is actually getting my energy work done
Mm.
because it's like all of a sudden the world opens up and I'm like, "Oh, the sun came out," right? It's like literally a cloudy day turns into bright sunshine and the weight literally is lifted on my shoulder off my shoulders. And so all of a sudden the decisions I couldn't make, I can step into really clearly and with confidence. Even acknowledging the riskiness of it or the weight of the decision. I'm like, "Okay, this is what's gonna be." And then I have now stopped putting bad energy behind bad decision making and behind,
Right.
the whole
Right, right.
so I think the 2 are so connected, um, and the work that you do is so fascinating to me because you talk about coming at it from a very logical place, which I understand. Um, but to hear you say the things and to talk about it feels like such a natural continuation of this conversation that when the 2 are put together, which, bravo to Canyon Ranch for thinking about this being the sort of the natural connection, because it really is. Like, it's brilliant to me, that connection, the conversation.
I'm so grateful for them too. I didn't see it initially, but then as I started to go deeper with you, I was like, "This is awesome. This is awesome." There was something that you said around the sensitivity and the energy work, and all I want to reflect back to you is that you have spent the hours at this point where it's almost like you can tune your instrument with such sophistication. You sense into subtlety in a way that maybe, 10, 20 years ago, that wasn't available. And yet now you've developed that skill. And I say that some people are naturally more inclined. In science, they will call it interoception, which is its ability to sense in and place in language what it is that's going on. And many people, at the beginning of the journey don't have a lot of interoception. But through persistence, maybe necessity, you started to really turn your ear to listen to the body whispers, to validate the truth aches, and clear. And I just want to, again, reflect back to that is all a testament of your devotion. And that work can't happen if your heart isn't open.
Mm-hmm.
So, love also has love, devotion, genuine care, kindness have a place in this discussion because it affects energy, playfulness, silliness. This is all very important when it comes to being able to move energy, things that will squelch energy, too much seriousness. That will take the channel and it will shut it down.
Right.
So
Right.
I'm also curious about what this energy technique is that you use now that helps you cleanse and clear and ground.
So one example.
Open.
Yeah. I have a person, and she's wonderful, but so when I really need it, we do it on the phone, which also amazes me. But I basically just ask questions. I have a list of questions that I need answers to. She's an empath. She's really intuitive about these things. She has a gift.
Mm.
And so, with such clarity, she sort of shines the mirror, turns and says,
she can guide.
do you see what this means? And it becomes that. And for some people who really don't believe this stuff, I believe that actually this won't be successful because you wholeheartedly have to believe these things to trust it. But it blows my mind every time. And she doesn't need any information. She just goes right to it. And that's what I need sometimes because honestly, I go again to a place where I can't see the answers because I'm blocked. I can't,
Sure.
I don't understand. And whether it's I've had, personal issues that she has helped with. I've had relationships with family members that have seemed really challenging and difficult. And by the way, these all are negotiations in some way, right? That I'm all of a sudden incapable of being able to carry out. And it's really amazing. So for me, I need that level of clarity, somebody to explain. And, I get sort of a toolkit from it, but the toolkit doesn't feel like do this, do that, do this. But it's more like, does that feel right to you? I mean, through the whole conversation, does this sound right? Does this feel right? Am I on the right track? Does it sound okay? And the minute I'm like, yeah, no, can't do that. Then it's like, okay, let's examine some other way of doing this. And just to give you an example, I mean, I don't want to, this is not my therapy session, but the last spoke to her was really a conversation about boundaries and reclaiming my own sort of power of decision making. It changed everything. It was amazing. Something that's very rational to me, those who can do, those who can't teach kind of thing. I tell anybody, I fix anybody when it comes to this, but I couldn't do it for myself. And yeah, I feel like, again, like somebody gave me a flashlight. It was dark. They gave me a flashlight and I could find the path. And so I think it's really important work, but it doesn't work for everybody. You have to find what's appropriate for you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. But it's just wonderful that a person of your credibility and status will even talk about energy work. I just think that in and of itself is liberation in action because it is very much, I mean, this is I do believe that this is a quantum experience by which people can assist each other in non-local ways. And I think there's science to back up that intuitive experience. And it feels magical. Maybe it's scientific. Science usually is lagging in regards to the wisdom traditions. They'll eventually catch up. The Buddha thousands of years ago said that meditation could change your life, but people maybe didn't pay attention until the scientists validated it about 50 years ago. So, you know how these things go. Um, let's wrap it up with just two more questions. I want to know how it's just about the stories we tell ourselves. So you just illustrated, how you're tending to yourself personally to overcome blocks, but how do you help leaders catch the self-limiting story loop before it starts to run the whole show?
The simple truth is you cannot be a good negotiator. You cannot be successful in negotiations if you don't know your own value and your own worth. Because your job in negotiations is to be your own advocate. And to advocate for yourself, you must also know who you're fighting for, right? And how important that is. And so just that alone is such a big leap for some people because they are dealing with things like childhood trauma or imposter syndrome or whatever it is. So that first really sort of big aha moment comes from the connection between, understanding your self-worth and value and how that affects the way you set goals, the things that you want in your life, how big those things are, right? I talk a lot about, all the things that are possible for you, all the things that you can manifest, um, and yet how limiting it is when you don't understand that all those things were meant for you and that they're really the only limitations that are out there are the ones you place on yourself. And for this part, I gave them research, right? I tell them how in positive psychology, athletic performance, and negotiations, the people that end up having the kinds of results that they want, right? Those are the people who have the courage to want more for themselves. They are aspirational in their goal setting. All things are possible, right? They're in a place of abundance, as opposed to sort of the energy that the heaviness that comes with it when you think about things from a place of scarcity, because scarcity means anxiety and stress, and there just is never enough. And oh my God, let me just carve out a little space for myself, as opposed to little space. Like, oh no, I deserve big space, right? I deserve all of this. And that connection, when you make that connection, because it's so grounded in research and science, becomes very obvious. It's like what appears like, how's that connected? Comes to a place of, 2 + 2 = 4.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I get it, right? And when you show them sort of the vast pool of data and research that supports this, it's a real aha moment because this goes back to a left brain, right brain kind of thing. And how very obviously these things are connected.
Mm-hmm. So if a leader wants to, let's say, start to practice self-negotiation today, not as just like a concept, but like a living discipline, where would you suggest that they start?
A lot of the times it really is things like the way that you speak to yourself,
Yeah.
right? That self-narrative that you talked about, how mean we are to ourselves, um, how sort of that lack of self-love, um, the empathy that we don't have for ourselves, the grace that we don't give ourselves, especially for people who are perfectionists and high achievers. Like when people move goalposts, right? They want to do something, then they achieve that, and it's like on to the races, right? And then it's the next thing, and then they move the goalposts again, and there's not even a minute to appreciate how far you've come and what you've done, without thinking, unless I can get to that next step, this wasn't good enough. And so, I do believe that what we say to ourselves really matters. The way we talk to ourselves really matters. But the good news is that this can all change. I mean, the whole notion of this concept of neuroplasticity, which is so important in things like
Mhm.
conversations and really it's all about just, your brain is a muscle basically, and you can really do the exercise to rewire it. And so for people who are always catastrophizing and think about things from a really negative place, you really can change that, right? You can start focusing on something else or rewire the way you think about things. And with that comes changing the way you talk to yourself. And again, the best part of all of this is that you are the only person who can change it. And to me, there's nothing more empowering, because the minute the outside world has to do something for you, there's never a safe bet. Like it can happen, it cannot happen. I choose not to focus on that because it's very defeatist to me.
Mm-hmm. Well, Mori, I'm so grateful for the work that you're doing in the world and the stand that you take in the art of negotiation. It resonates with every cell in my being. I see exactly what you are doing, and I look forward to our collaboration at Canyon Ranch in June. So thank you for taking the time on the Practice Podcast.
I'm so excited. I'm so excited to learn from you and further engage in this conversation. I think it's really it's something. It really is, and I'm really excited for us to keep the conversation going.
Agreed. Thank you for taking the time.
Thank you for having me.
Bye.